Hi, welcome back to another video. Today is the day that I'm going to talk a little bit about the first few months of the season, some of the events that I'm going to have on the calendar. I actually haven't entered any events yet, but this is kind of like a little bit of a plan, and then as the year goes on and on, I'll add to the plan. Things will change based on how races go, etc. So yeah, really looking forward to going through that all with you shortly. Before I do that, I have just jumped on the turbo, literally just jumped on the turbo 2 minutes in. I've got about 2 hours. I'm being quite relaxed at the moment, so about 2 hours, and then after the session I will jump back on and go through those races with you, give you a little bit more information about what's going to go down this season. But yeah, new upload day is not going to be Friday, Monday at 2 p.m. It's going to be a weekly thing. I'm going to be regular, or try to be, and yeah, I better focus on the session now, so I'll catch you guys in a bit. One question I do have: does anyone ever do this? Portable charger, charging the Di2. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but yeah, how often do people charge their Di2? I don't think I've charged it since I was in California, so it lasted me a good few months on the turbo. Alright, let's get back to it. Okay, so that was the session done. I think it was an hour and 20 minutes on the turbo. I was going to do a little bit longer, but actually I'm just going to top up the aerobic riding tomorrow. The session I did was basically just a block at what I would say is like your aerobic threshold. So you're wanting to basically not spike the heart rate too high. So I tried to keep my heart rate around 150 to 155. But also I had like an over gear element to it. So I was trying to keep my cadence lower than basically lower than optimal. So I'm quite a high cadence athlete, 90 to 95 really when I'm racing. So I was dropping it down to like 70, 75, which feels pretty low for me. I know low cadence for some other people is like 55, 60, but even at 75, I feel like I'm grinding quite a lot. So just dropping it down a little bit increases that strength element. As I mentioned on the turbo when I was warming up, I just want to go through the first like section of the year quickly in terms of like what races I'm going to do, what events I'm going to do, and then also like some of the goals and aspirations behind those events. With Ironman branded events, it's very trickle fed for pros. So what they do is they announce a few races and then they sort of bring out the next month or two. So I think at the moment there's events up until August on the website, but then there's obviously a gap after that. So the back end of the year is very dependent on what actually comes in. But also how I race. So if the beginning of the season goes really, really well or not so well, that can obviously then impact what races or where the focus moves to later in the season. Yeah, so first event of the year, hopefully, to be fair, I haven't entered any of these events yet, so this is still subject to change, but if I can get entries into all these events, the season opener will be Challenge Salou on the 3rd of April. I did Challenge Salou in September last year. Unfortunately, it was changed to a duathlon, and unfortunately, I DNF'd. But because it was a duathlon, that means I'm still 100% successful in triathlon. Just in terms of my duathlon career, I am 0 for 1. No finishes in duathlon as of yet. Yeah, in terms of the course itself, I really actually liked the look of the bike. Well, I like the look of it. I liked riding on the bike course. It was reasonably flat, pretty rolling in some sections, but it was like fast rolling, so like power hills. So I think it's a course that can suit me. I think the dynamic of the duathlon was to my detriment because I was playing catch up and I was having to try and go through packs of people. Whereas if I can do a standard middle distance race, I should be at the front from the get-go, which then obviously just changes the dynamic for me completely. But yeah, really looking forward to hopefully, just basically blowing away the cobwebs, but starting the race season early this year. And the main reason for doing Challenge Toulouse is that I wanted to get a middle distance race in before my first big race of the year, which is going to be Ironman Texas. Again, I have a bit of like a scratch to itch in terms of doing a pro Ironman full distance, but also racing one in the States. So again, I went to California in October, just gone in 2021. Cyclone the day of the race, 40-mile-an-hour winds, sideways rain, got cooled off, so it was a long round trip for a holiday. But yeah, so heading out to Texas, and the race in Texas is in the Woodlands, which is about an hour north of Houston. So if you fly into Houston, I think it's about an hour drive out of Houston. So from what I've heard, it is a lightning quick course. I think it's changed slightly from when I think Matt Hansen broke the world record there, or controversially broke the world record there a couple of years ago. I think the bike course was a little bit short and the run course was definitely a bit short. But I think they have adjusted that course slightly now. So it will, hopefully it's still going to be a quick course. But again, it changes the dynamic. The reason I selected Ironman Texas was kind of twofold. I wanted to do an Ironman early season, so there was kind of two options, which were South Africa or Texas. Logistically, Texas is actually easier to get to because it's just a single flight. South Africa looked like quite a complex race to get to. The other reason for doing an early season Ironman was basically when I started the sport, I had, so for those that don't know, I watched 2017 KONA, and I saw Tower Cox's videos of all the pro athletes sort of in the build up to KONA. I kind of half paid attention to the race in KONA that year. I didn't watch it live or anything, but just kind of the social media buzz around it. And that sparked me to then taking triathlon up in 2018 properly. So with that being said, since the beginning of starting triathlon, the goal was always KONA. That was going to happen as an amateur. Unfortunately, it didn't because of missing 2 years of COVID. However, that is still the ambition now as a pro athlete is to get to the Big Island as a pro. So that being said, there is an Ironman World Championships in 2022, but in St. George, and that's the beginning of May. So I'm going to be racing in April. So there's a kind of there's an element of tactic about it, which means that anyone who's going to be racing that St. George race shouldn't be racing at Ironman Texas. However, that doesn't then limit the people who are like 70.3 specialists who want to step up for the first time, or those that like have qualified for KONA in the past who may have been like just outside. So it still means it's going to be like probably quite a solid field. But again, it kind of, for me, gives me that opportunity, missing a few athletes, to kind of try and fight for a podium and obviously fight for a KONA slot. It will be my first pro Ironman, and the dynamics and tactics and stuff like that do play a role. So to kind of hit that goal on the first race might be quite unrealistic. But I think you've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to give yourself the opportunity to try and reach that goal. And then that will then sort of give me a really good indication of where I actually am at, and then how much do I need to improve or change, or just like tactically race better to reach that goal in the next race or next event or next opportunity. And that being said, then I've got an opportunity to hopefully race a 70.3, so maybe doing like something like Aix-en-Provence, which I did again last year, which is a quality race in the south of France. But then the next big goal then will be Frankfurt at the end of June, the 26th of June. Frankfurt is one of those big German Ironman events that everyone kind of wants to take part in. It's going to be the European Championships for men. So that's going to draw hopefully a strong field. I'm not sure how many people who are doing like both World Championships next year as pros will bother racing Frankfurt in the middle, or, you know, they might just need to get they might want to try and do a third Ironman in the year, so it might just be a really strong stacked field. But again, I don't want to sort of just go for like the easy option and just go and like really sugar, like sort of pick events based on, you know, I think that's going to be super easy to try and like podium or win. like I do want to try and race like strong fields, and I think Frankfurt's going to be one of those fields where, you know, the difference between coming like 2nd and 10th is a space of like 5 minutes. And I think that's going to kind of hopefully shape me as an athlete, and if not reward me this season, will reward me next year and moving forward. So yes, the goal is to try and qualify for KONA, ideally this year, but it is a long shot. But that's going to be the goal for the next year or two, you know, until I can reach that goal. And then obviously you then set the bar a little bit higher. So yeah, so from now until the end of June, I've got those goals. 2 big Ironmans to try and focus on. I'm then going to have probably like a bit of a mid-season break. I'm getting married to my fiance at the end of July. So we'll kind of have a period where, you know, there is going to be some disrupted training and that sort of stuff. But then obviously once the season is kind of, well, to be fair, once I see how I race in those first events, I can then make a decision on how the back end of the season is going to go. And therefore I can kind of have almost 2 seasons. So I'll definitely fit another Ironman in 2022. If the A standard goes, that hopefully would be KONA. But if it won't be, then I've got the opportunity to then look at like big races like Ironman Italy, Ironman California maybe again, but maybe not travel all the way out there. But yeah, there's definitely going to be races on the calendar that kind of excite me. And then, yeah, you never know. There's races late into the season like Clash, Daytona, that go all the way until December. So depending on how the season's going and how sort of motivated, fresh, and like how the body's holding up, you can kind of, I think that's probably the biggest thing moving from being an amateur to a professional, is you have the flexibility to change, but also to decide what you're going to do like only like a month or 2 before you do it. Whereas when you're an amateur, you kind of enter your race and then you kind of wait for it. Like, so a lot of people locally here in South Wales will enter Ironman Wales for 2020. That's been their goal for, you know, it's going to be coming up in 3 years. You don't have the luxury just to like jump into a race in a month or 2's time unless it's not sold out. You know, sometimes you can if you're lucky, but in most cases, like, races are sold out like 6 to 12 months in advance. So it's a nice position to be in, to have that level of flexibility. And I'm really kind of excited to basically just line up and see how I get on. I said I'd talk a little bit more about my aspirations. I've got like mini goals for like swim, bike, run throughout the season. Kind of like, I guess, like levels I want to try and reach. And then obviously then specifically for the events. So the first big one of the season will be Ironman Texas. The goal at Ironman Texas will be to try and contend for the podium. And I need to try and firstly see who enters the event, but also crunch numbers to see what swim, bike and run I physically think I'm capable of at the moment. And then hopefully that will be kind of in the, I guess, in close enough to like reach that goal of trying to be close to the podium. But I also just want to get that full distance pro race under my belt, because you never know how the first one's going to go until you kind of really just dive into it and give it a go. But yeah, I'm super pumped. Training's going really well. The weekly vlogs are going to be going every Monday. I said at the beginning of the video, every Monday at 2 p.m. So make sure you click subscribe and you get the little bell icon so you get notified when I bring out a new video. So in the build up to these races, I'm going to be bringing you training, sponsorship updates, kind of any tips and tricks I get. And then also in the weeks or week before the event, I'll do a pre-race video and also a post-race video breaking it down, and also hopefully getting some really cool content of the races. This channel is going to develop, and I think, yeah, it's going to be an exciting year ahead. So any questions or any comments anyone has, drop them down below about my schedule so far, or any advice for any late season races. Yeah, chuck them in there, because I'm always up for suggestions and ideas for fun races to do. Thanks again for watching the video, and I will see you next time.